If you've tried to convince your wife that working through the problems together is best, if you've tried to see a couples therapist, if you've tried to show her all of your changes, but she doesn't seem to notice or care, and all you want is to win your wife back, then you're about to watch the video that you've been waiting for. Because when this client told his wife he would win her back, she laughed and said, "Roger, we're done. There's no way I'm ever getting back with you." Now, a rational, insane man would believe his wife, but Roger stumbled upon a skill with his wife that brought her back into his arms 3 months after she was certain of divorce. Now, this skill became his superpower after he mastered it. He was able to stop wasting his time on actions that pushed his wife away and instead focus on the new few actions that made his wife feel safe and understood. To find his inner apex self by removing all of the weakness from his emotional core, to create an untapped social potential, knowing exactly what to say to his wife in every single moment, where he never second-guessed himself, and a framework for understanding his wife's once confusing feminine nature. So now only clarity comes through where confusion and frustration used to be. Now, at the end of this video, I will show you how he persuaded his wife to see his changes as well. My name is Josh Hudson. I'm a licensed therapist with over 10 years of experience, and I help men win their wives back with masculine authenticity, not sacrificing who they are in the process. And my methods work 2 to 3 times more effective than when I tried traditional marriage counseling. Let's jump into the video. There are 4 principles that Roger went through that I'm gonna share with you that led him to win his wife back. Now, the first principle is, it is not what, but who. Your wife didn't leave you because of everything you've done. She left you for who you are. Now, I know that your behaviors are the justifications to say why she's leaving you, but stick with me with this idea. Listen. A lot of the things that she is justifying and using to leave you in the beginning of the relationship, if you did those same things, it wouldn't have been an issue. Now, a lot of guys have the objection to that, saying, well, it's the compounded interest of all these negative behaviors. And there is some truth to that. But just follow me for a couple seconds with Roger's story. You see, when Roger's wife first left him, he was desperate and he asked, why? Just give me a reason. And his logical brain wanted those problems so he could solve them and say, look, I fixed these things, now let's get back together. However, the day that Roger's wife left him, it's because he didn't get her a Valentine's Day card, right? Was it because of the Valentine's Day card? No. It was because of all the compounded interest of the man that Roger has become. And that was just a symptom showing the kind of man that he was, lacking attention, lacking care. Right? Those core values changed in Roger when they were different in the beginning of the relationship. So he pressed his wife. He said, well, okay, fine, but like, it can't just be that. And she said, well, fine. It was because you were always controlling in the radio and that you never really went with us and the kids to these weekend out getaways because you were tired from work all week. And she started listing all these reasons. And all his brain could think about was like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? Right? Why didn't I know this was such a big issue? Now it's a big issue. Before you would get kind of upset, but you didn't really talk about it. It's because you're fearful of avoidance. And you see, when your brain is trying to find all these logical reasons and these kind of like branches to cut off a tree, from the previous metaphor I talked about on this channel a lot, what happens is that you're not addressing the core root issue and that you change as a man, right? The man that you are now is not the man that you used to be. Yeah, there are a lot of similarities and you've even grown in some areas for sure. But these core parts of you that she needed to feel safe, protected for, provided for, and honestly not needy toward her, that part of you has changed. And so when you can shift your perspective that it's not these simple behaviors, that if I just fix these things, if I just show her these changes, she should come back to me, right? That just makes sense. No, it is deeper than that, right? You need to address these core root issues in who you are first. Now, this is important because once you do this, you can make the same mistakes that she actually wanted to leave you for, but she can justify that it's okay to be with you. And there's something about female psychology that a lot of guys don't really understand, is that her emotions are dictating her perception, right? And this is why a woman can be with a man, right? And from all her friends are saying, oh, he's an a-hole, he's doing all these awful things. And then she's finding reasons why to stay with him. Even if it's just one little thing, he's such an abusive a-hole. Extreme example to prove the point. But as soon as she actually makes that a mental shift that he has changed, then she'll use all those reasons that her friends were saying. She's like, you know what? You were right, Susie. That was an issue and I just didn't see it clearly. What's changed is the guy changed for sure, but also her perception. And you have to recognize, no matter what logically you change and try to show her, if you are this enemy, if you are a negative sentiment override, as I say on this channel, if you're a negative sentiment override, which is level 1 of getting her back in the 5 stages, what happens is that you make that shift first in the way she sees you, and then she starts to rationalize why she should actually be with you. The second principle that Roger used to win his wife back was the vulnerability core perception. All right, now one of the things that I like to do on these group calls is I like to find from this quote, the deeper the wound, the more universal it is. What that means is that on the surface, we can hear all these symptoms of different reasons why the men are losing their wife, right? But the deeper we go with this core reason, everyone has it. And so when I was on this group call, I got men to finally open up and share that. And deep down, they all shared that they did not feel good enough for their wife. Their wife didn't appreciate them over the years. And deep down, there was this sense of just I can't make her happy. No matter what I do, I feel defeated around her. That makes sense, doesn't it? I love this exercise because it really connects all the men together in the program. Marianne Williamson wrote a book, Return to Love, and there's a quote in there that I want to share with you that really strikes a chord with me with this concept. She says, if I am convinced that I am not good enough, then I will have a very difficult time accepting someone into my life that thinks I am. To the ego, self-acceptance is death. Now to Roger, if we were to speak to that part of him that didn't feel good enough, of course his wife left him. His father was never around. His mom abandoned the family because she had alcoholic issues, right? So of course, deep down, he knew this was always going to happen. On the surface, consciously, no, she should be with him. But you have to recognize that your subconscious brain, what provides your emotions, what dictates the fear that's always been buried underneath, that's what's really present with you, always under the surface, guiding your life. Right? There's a quote from Carl Jung. He says, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, the second principle that we had to do with Roger is that we had to bring to surface this truth, present it and put it on the table and see it for what it was, that he didn't feel good enough. Good. Let's accept that that's there. And the beautiful thing about change is that once you truly accept that's a part of you, it goes away. There's nothing you have to do. Like Marianne Williamson said, to the ego, self-acceptance is death. And when I helped Roger fully accept himself for who he is and all the mistakes that he's had, he let go of that shame, that belief that he wasn't good enough. And he came out on the other side transformed. Once we addressed this core root issue, then Roger was now able, he was well equipped to turn his attention now to his wife and take proactive action to win her back. You know, Roger told me, he said, Josh, I'm really jealous because when I go on these Facebook groups posts, I see all these other wives, these guys complaining that their wives are yelling at them or, you know, criticizing them or nagging at them. He's like, I would pay money to have my wife do that. I would love to have my wife criticize me because to me, that shows she cares. You see, Roger's wife was this fearful avoidant, which we changed that language pattern later on because it really affected the way he presented himself to her. But his wife was very distant and didn't really open up about her emotions. And I had to constantly catch Roger in this perception. You see, viewing his wife as this person who's cold, unemotional because of her trauma and all these things, I said, Roger, you're a part of that interaction, right? You have more influence over her than you realize. You're the one that's chasing her. You're the one that's always trying to fix things. You see, when I was talking with Roger one time, and I can relate to this, when he was in an argument with his wife, he would think to himself, what do you need in this moment to be happy? Now, on the surface, that sounds like a good thing to think, right? Like, yeah, if your wife's upset, like, what do I do to make her happy? I said, Roger, why don't you think to yourself, what should she do to make me happy? Well, that's selfish. Maybe, but is there a happy medium? Like, what can we do to work through this together? You see, you need to put we first. And we recognize that Roger was in his selfish emotions during conflict. He was always thinking to himself, how can I make her happy? And that is selfish because he was trying to make her happy because he wanted to be happy. You see how that works? Wanting to make her happy is a selfish intent with you. Instead, if you think she should have her emotions and how can we work through this together? Okay, that is the perception you should have during conflict. And truly understanding his wife on that core level and recognizing that he had a part in that interaction of her being avoidant and shut down, that the more he pursued, the more he tried to fix, the more he used logic, the more she didn't feel understood, she didn't feel accepted, and she had to retreat because of her patterns growing up for sure. But if he changed his behavior, her behavior would change in that equation. You see, and Roger was so good at intellectualizing and saying, well, if she did this first, I would change first. I said, Roger, the masculine leads, okay? You are in charge, you are able to change the pattern. And once he realized this, he started to. Now for this fourth principle, I want to share the difference between manipulation and persuasion. Manipulation is getting people to do things they don't want to do. Persuasion is getting people to do things that are in their best interest. Now, how do you separate those two with your wife? Is it manipulation to change your behavior, to get her to see you differently, to come back to you? Or is that manipulation, persuasion or manipulation? We could sit here for hours and debate that. Maybe I will on a podcast, little plug for the podcast coming out. But what I believe in our ethos here in Marriage Mastery and Pinnacle of Man, our company, is that at the end of the day, I know you have good intentions. And if you don't have good intentions, skip away from this video. I don't want you watching my stuff, okay? Most men I work with, I know have good intentions. You are a good man. You've worked hard your whole life. You have amazing core values. You are loving, you are kind, you want the best for others, and you're kind of a perfectionist. You're a little hard on yourself, aren't you? Probably close to the mark there. So at the end of the day, by doing these things, and what I'm about to teach you for this next principle, the most powerful one yet, I know it's a place of persuasion. Because once you address that core wound of not feeling good enough, everything you do to her to get her to come back to you is persuasion, is getting her to see that you are the best for her because you haven't been your best with her. Now, the final concept I taught Roger was the idea of reality transurfing, also known as just frame control. And I talked a lot about in the past where you shouldn't have the frame of you trying to control her, but more of like it's a collaborative we, right? But the idea idea here is that whenever you're speaking to her, you must have the belief that you are the best thing for her, okay? And when you go forward with this idea, at first you can have curiosity around it. She won't be able to help herself seeing like, oh, did he really change? But she's going to test you, okay? Because the only way she can know for certain that you are making these changes is to test, is to see this suit of armor that you have on now and poke it and poke it and poke it to make sure it doesn't collapse. That it's not an illusion. And I have a whole video on tests at the end of this video that you can check out. It's the most comprehensive video on the whole entire channel. But tests come in the form for Roger. What it was is that she would start to skate along his boundaries. And this is the most common way a wife will test a husband or a woman will test a man. For example, she knew that Roger wanted one day to himself and he started to do this for himself, right? On Saturdays. That was his whole day to himself. She had the kids and he had the whole day to do whatever he wanted. Now, one day she said, hey, I want you to watch the kids on Saturday. I'm gonna go off on a weekend with my friends. Can you watch the kids? Okay. Now, on the surface, it would seem, if you're gonna answer this question for yourself, I should do this favor for her because it'll make her happy and win brownie points, right? And she'll like me more. No, absolutely not. Because Roger set this boundary with her a couple weeks before saying, hey, Saturdays are mine. I'm gonna start doing things for myself, going to the gym, having new hobbies, doing these things for me. And she's saying to herself subconsciously, her subconscious brain saying, oh, really? You're gonna be this changed man? We'll see about that. So she was all nice when she called him saying, hey, hey, do you wanna watch the kids on Saturday? I'm gonna go do this thing. I think it would really help me a lot. But Roger learned about these tests and said, you know what, I would love to do this for you, but you know, I have plans and I'm sorry, but I can't do that. If you wanna let me pick a different day or, you know, a couple days, weeks out and we can shift the day. He didn't really say no completely, but he held to what his boundaries were. And because of that, she got upset in the moment, but guess what? That next week, Roger asked her on a date and she said yes. And that wouldn't have happened if he didn't maintain his boundaries because that was a test he passed, all right? With these 4 principles, consistently practice over and over and over. It's not just a one-time thing, but practicing them over and over and over, addressing that core wound, right? Passing those tests for her, understanding her on a deep level. Roger was slowly able to invest a lot of positive emotional experiences with his wife to get her to shift the way she saw him. And that's when she came back. And that's when she always comes back, okay? If you need support along this process, what you can do right now is you can set up a call down below. But overall, I just want to say thank you for watching the video and my heart goes out to you. I'm here for you if you need support and don't go at this by yourself. There's support here for you if you need it. Cheers.